Eric Soderstrom, the booking agent, came over to us and he said, "Hey guys, I'm going to put you guys on the Sub Pop Party show coming up, playing first." He goes, "And I just want to see what happens."
Welcome everyone to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we start, did you know that the unreleased Sunny Day Real Estate album is online? You can message me on my Instagram and I'll send you a link. This is a repost of episode 100, and it seemed relevant because Sunny Day Real Estate is on tour right now, and they are one of my all-time favorite fucking bands, so I just thought, why not? Especially since I'm doing 3 on 1 off, I don't like to really leave a Friday open with nothing, so I'm doing these reposts to show people these old episodes, and so here's an old one for you. If you don't know who Sunny Day Real Estate is, then I don't really know what to fucking tell you. So I'm not gonna do a whole intro on who they are. So you should probably know them, and if not, just go Google them or just look up any of their albums on Spotify and have your fucking mind blown. About 94 episodes ago, I got Willam on the Skype, and this is what we chat about. My Sunny Day tattoo story, what drumming has done to him physically, what was his scene, how the band got together, Diary's artwork, breaking up right when they were taking off, Red Elephant, trying to find inspiration to make music again, recording Rising Tide, working through anxiety, the unreleased album, and a ton more. Make sure you check out his band Assertion. You can find them on all the social platforms and even Spotify or wherever you listen to music. Before we start, make sure you go follow my Instagram. It's This Was The Scene, and if you're already following it, make sure you share it with a friend, or it would be nice if you shared it with a friend because I just broke 3,000 followers, which is awesome because I think that gives me more reach and it gets more people to listen to the podcast and find this thing. So all those little tiny things really help this thing stay alive, so please go do that. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. So Assertion is the new band, and I just want to just say that in the beginning, because then at the end I'll have you plug whatever, but how are you guys practicing right now?
At my place here.
Because I've seen those videos, and I'm like, oh, was this done before all of this?
You're talking about the lockdown.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, so once all that happened, Brian was staying at home, but Justin was coming over here. He was pretty much the only people he was really ever seeing were his kids and us. So yeah, we did a lot of mixing then, and and we just stayed 6 feet apart. That's all. And but we actually have been doing mostly mixing. We just started playing again. Brian came over for the first time a few days ago.
Nice.
Or a week ago or so, and we played. But we were basically like, well, best thing to do right now is to basically try to finish this record. And so we tracked the rest of the songs we need to track, and then I also decided to retrack a couple songs. So everything's tracked. It's all mixing now. So.
Okay. Well, at least you got that, because then you don't, because you have that's your house and you have your drums obviously set up there. But I mean, drums usually don't really want to do anything later on because that would fuck up everything.
Yeah.
Could have a stuff days. This is episode 100, and I'm so
and hey,
this.
Thank you. I don't mean to interrupt you. Thank you again for your patience.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually, I mean, you reach out to people. Everyone's been asking me, like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I need to interview someone. I go, just Instagram message people because people seem really quick at getting back, and you literally messaged me back like within a day.
Yeah, and then did the interview 6 months later. I didn't know.
Yeah, I know. That's fine. There's one guy I'm talking to right now. I've been trying to book him. I'm trying to get him on this, and I think it's been about over 2 years I've been trying, and he's just like constant because he was still going on tour and stuff, and we just can't lock it down. But he's like, I'm really trying, man. I was like, don't worry, I'm here. I'm ready to go when you are. But
yeah.
But this one, so each episode each milestone, I guess, has been I've accidentally made it into something that meant something really to me. The first episode's a milestone because you're launching it, so that's just me talking. But then the episode, there's one before I start talking to bands that influenced us outside of New Jersey, because this whole thing started about the late 90s, basically Jersey punk scene. Sure. And right before I think I went to episode 30 where I broke out, but I interviewed my best friend. We were in a band together, and he's the reason I got into music. So it's like that was a big milestone. And then 50 was like this guy Ricky who used to do a lot of shows in Jersey. And so when this one came up, people were like, "What are you gonna do for 100?" I was like, man, this is like too much fucking pressure. Like I almost was just gonna get on it and say, "Hey, this is Mike. This is episode 100. Fuck it, episode 101's next." Like I was just so, I was so bummed. But this one's for me personally. Sunny Day was a huge influence on me. I got like my buddy Bob gave me Diary. It was as when it was a tape cassette. This is like the early 90s. I think I was 14, and he gave me the record because his buddy's older brother gave it to him or something, and I immediately fell in love with that album, and that album's become huge. And then the Pink album was a favorite, and then How It Feels to Be Something On, and like The Rising Tide. So like I know a lot about you guys, and I've been a huge fan forever. And I just wanted to state before we jump into this, because the way I structure this, and I'm talking too much right now, but the way I'll structure is kind of go back in time, talk about how you got into music, talk about the band, like and all that stuff. But I actually have a tattoo on my back from How It Feels to Be Something On, that album cover.
Which painting?
The cover.
Oh wow.
Which awesome. I found out later on was actually Jeremy's tattoo on his forearm.
Yes, and he does have that, yeah.
So the funny story was that I was in LA, living in LA a couple years after I got it, and I was outside some club. This is like 2001, 2002, and I'm sitting there smoking a cigarette, and I look over, and he's there, and I was like, "Are you fucking Jeremy Enigk?" I was like, "Holy shit!" I was like, big fan of Sunny Day, and this is like right when you guys were starting to record Fire Theft, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like before it came out. And I walked up to my buddy. He's like, "Oh, show me your tattoo." I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "Yeah, I got this." He's like, "Wow, what's up, you fucking plagiarist?" I was like, "I love it." But Jeremy, and I was like,
that sounds like Jeremy's humor.
It was just funny. But like you were actually there, and I was like, "Hey," I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm doing this record like with Willam and Nate." And I was like, "Oh my god, that's cool." And he's like, "Yeah, William's actually right over there." And I was like, "Holy shit!" So that was pretty much the last time.
Where was that?
This was in Hollywood in 2001 or 2002.
Okay, so that must have been when we were down there doing vocals and mixing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we tracked it up in Kirkland at my old house. Yeah.
Dude, I love that record. I that record, and like I said, all the Sunny Day stuff. Like I've been a giant fucking fan. So again, I'm gonna just really want to point that out.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. So, all right. So enough about me fucking talking. So I want to go back.
That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to talk, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but everyone's like, we want to hear this guy talk, not the fucking host of the show, which I totally get. But yeah, so like I said, I structure it and kind of go back in time. Super casual, just any cool stories come up, great. But yeah, like kind of like go back in time because your whole scene. You guys, like when you guys broke in and people, when I heard of you guys, actually it was afterwards, but I mean, this was like during the grunge era and like then it transformed into like the punk and emo and all that shit. And you guys obviously stayed with that even though you weren't a band, but then got back together in 98 for a minute.
Sure.
So back in time though, before all this, like when you were a kid, like what was the song on the radio or like the video on MTV or whatever it was that you heard it and you were like, fuck, I got to pay attention to music?
Well, when I was 5, I got super into the Beatles, Earth, Wind and Fire, and Stevie Wonder.
Nice.
And oddly enough, this weird musical adaptation of War of the Worlds with some of the folks from oh my god, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on the name. The band that does Nights in White Satin. God, I can't.
Moody Blues?
Yes, thank you. Jesus, yeah. Justin's gonna kill me for drawing a blank on that. But which is a very bizarre record. But so when I was 5, and then also many other records, but those are the ones that I listened to like over and over again, even though the War of the Worlds one actually gave me nightmares. But then when I was in 6th grade, I basically became obsessed with the Talking Heads and had every single one of their records up to that point, which was, I think, Little Creatures was their most recent one at the time. And so I became obsessed with Talking Heads when I was in 6th grade. And then when I guess I was 11. So then when I was 13 and in 8th grade, my brother, Brian, sat me down and played me Permanent Waves by Rush, Quadrophenia by The Who, what else? Led Zeppelin, Elvis Costello, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Pink Floyd, on and on and on. And so it was those records. He sat me down and took me on this journey. And yes, and that was another band. I mean, I could keep coming up, bands would keep popping up, but he basically gave me this sort of education and would tell me these stories about Keith Moon and all this stuff. Not the crazy one, but more about his playing. And
he's like, and this is when he did another line of Blow. You're like,
no. It
on.
was more like my cousin would be there, and they said even when slow motion, they couldn't see sticks move. So anyway, crazy stuff like that. And so like people like John Bonham and Keith Moon, playing wise, became my superheroes.
So it was always drums though. Like drums, that was the thing that caught your attention when you're getting this whole lesson.
Yeah. So when I was 5 years old, I wanted to play drums since I was 5. Yeah.
What brought that on at 5 though? And I'm cutting you off, but I'm interested.
No, that's okay. What brought it on is I always feel weird and silly telling the story, but it's just the way it was, and I'm not saying it was real. But I had an imaginary friend who was a drummer, and that's how I got into it. That's what got me interested. I know that sounds really strange.
I don't think I'm going to argue with someone in 5 and being like, that sounds odd. I think everyone probably had that. Except mine wasn't a drummer. I think mine was I don't fucking know what mine was, but
yeah, his name was Joey Martineau.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, I know. That's really strange. I'm not saying it was real. I'm just saying I was 5. And and then also my brother Brian played drums a little bit, and he had an old Pearl set up down in the basement, and I would go downstairs and I would just stare at it. And one time he sat down and he hit the kick drum, and I was watching from the side. And when the mallet hit the bass drum head, to me, that was like the coolest thing. I don't know why, but so that's where the interest started, and it never stopped. I never stopped being interested. So I wanted a drum set all the way up until I was 13, and my folks finally gave in and got me a drum kit, and I set it up immediately when I got it and started playing it and just didn't stop.
Did you get any lessons, or did you just kind of just wing it?
No, they attempted to give me lessons, and I went in for a lesson, and he pulled out the handbook, and I was an ADHD nightmare kid, and just didn't learn the same way other people did, and so I knew that wasn't going to work out for me. So I just basically, I wish I would have stuck with the lessons, but I didn't, and so I basically would just set my drum kit up, take my brother's old stereo, and then set the speakers up behind my drums, and then blast these different records, and then try to do what they were doing.
At what point did you get to where you were going, okay, I think I got a hang of this?
Never. No, I'm kidding.
Still figuring it out.
I don't know. I never really thought about it that way. For me, I was, it's kind of weird. Like, it was a very, very hyper personal thing. And so it was just this self-expression. I never was really focused on, I'm trying to, be up to someone's standards or so. I don't know. I didn't really think about it like that. I was hyper focused on expressing myself through that instrument, and that's all I thought about. And honestly, I don't feel like I really got a handle on things that I really needed to get a handle on for me personally, playing wise, until I would say probably around 2007, 2008. Really? I really felt, it really was that long, to where I got to a point where I was actually learning how to breathe, relax into, because I played so hard and was stiff a lot of the times, especially in shows, because I had stage fright. And so like live, I would always be nowhere near what I was capable of because I was not relaxed. So I had to really learn how to relax. I had to learn how to breathe. I'd also done a lot of damage to my body from an improper approach and hitting really hard. And I messed myself up, and I had to go through this complete overhaul and basically be rebuilt by a rolfer. I had to clean my digestive system, all this stuff.
Really?
I had 7 years of martial arts training, to basically to bring my body back, to rebuild myself to where I could actually lift my arms over, pass up over my shoulders without screaming in pain.
So I want to go. I want to stay in like and go back up to how it transitioned in whatever stage you were into playing in bands. But real quick, I saw you guys play in 2009 when the four of you got back together, the original members got back together,
Sure.
and I saw you at Terminal 5 in New York City.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was one of those moments. I've told the story before, but my buddies, their wives, or I think their girlfriends, no, that their wives at the time, they were standing in front of me, and you guys go on, and I was like, "This is amazing! I never thought this." This is like the time when all the bands that I've always wanted to see got back together, and like the Refused, they got back together, like all of the shit was happening. So you guys got back together, and I was like, and you guys start, and I'm like, this is incredible. And then they're just like talking, and I was like, guys, please stop talking. And then like you guys play, and they start talking. I looked at them, I was like. I like put my hand above their shoulders, was like, if you guys don't shut the fuck up, I'm going to murder you. And they like walked to the side. I was like, I need to fucking see this. But at that show, because you said 2007, 2008, at that show, had you got to that, was that where you felt like you less tight and you're playing the way you wanted to play?
Well, I hope so. I think so. I think so. I had started playing in a band called that we called Brawley Banks, and that's what I was doing before the reunion that Sunny Day did, and that's where I really started changing my approach. The weird thing is the change in my approach that I was going through, and having to go back and play those songs from like Diary and the Pink record and stuff, but still I had to kind of marry the two. It was kind of a strange thing, and so I was still kind of like, when we were doing that tour, I was still in the process of trying to marry where I was as a drummer then, and then trying to go back and, readapt those old songs. So,
that's a good point.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, but I mean, I can't even, I have a hard time listening to some of those earlier records just because I can hear I just wasn't focused enough on Pocket. I can tell I wasn't relaxed. I could hear how nervous I am. You know what I mean? That kind of a thing. But I mean,
yeah, you were like, because I've seen videos, like the music videos, and then seen you play, and like even like the 120 minutes video, like there's all that stuff out there. Like, yeah, you were like, now that I think about it, like you did play super tight. Like you were, yeah.
Definitely.
So like going back to, all right, you getting into music, you're playing drums. Like, how old were you when? Because usually I'll ask people the question, because this is focused on like the late '90s, early 2000s. But you guys are relevant at the time because you guys were a band that influenced so many fucking bands at that time. But
we had no idea that we did.
Well, that's another thing why I was thinking of, I'll probably like mesh it together later on, my thoughts on that, but. That's really another reason I wanted to talk too, because I know that you guys probably were missing that, and this whole thing is happening outside of that, which I'm sure many people have told you stories about many fucking times in interviews or just like probably seeing you. But like the scene that I grew up in was the late '90s scene, but the scene you grew up in, because you were in Seattle at this time, right?
Yep.
And then so you grew up in that era when, from what I saw when I was younger, when like the grunge era was coming up, right? Was that like your scene?
No.
Okay.
So yeah, that was going on, but we were a part of a punk rock scene that was completely separate and disconnected from that.
Shit. Okay. Tell me about that. Like, were you in that scene first, or did you get in that scene because you started playing in a band?
Basically that scene existed, and I was playing in a band called the 13 at that time when I was in high school with my friend John Adkins, who is in many other bands, Hush Harbor, 764 Hero. Etc. And so, I had met Jeremy when he was 14 and I was 16, and we actually jammed together the first time we met a little bit. And then a couple of years later, when I think it was when Jeremy was 16, I think, and he was just turning 16. I was maybe almost about to be 18, and he joined this hardcore band, this punk rock band, and asked me if I wanted to play drums. And I tried it out, and I said yes. And so then I did it. And then that's when we started playing shows, and I was basically introduced to this whole scene that existed that I had no idea, I was not even aware of. So and so that was the way we basically started going out and playing. And, and then I met and became friends with all these different people in this punk rock scene. And joined this other band called Positive Greed. Went on my first tour when I got when it got out of high school, climbed into the van and went on tour with Born Against, Downcast,
Oh wow.
and Anti-Schism.
What was it like touring back then? Because I mean, obviously now everyone has a video and a recorder in their fucking pocket and can talk to anybody at any point in time. Like, just for and I have a good idea of what it was like for my time because this is before social media and shit. But like what did it look like when you guys were doing that and you're relying on payphones or phones or whatever the fuck it was to communicate like your next show?
Yeah, crammed in a van and, just trying to get to the next show, and having direct, Rick Guerra and Mike Hudson, I think they had a pretty good handle on, I think they booked it. I think Mike Hudson booked it, and they had a pretty good handle on what they were doing and the directions and everything. And so we managed to get to each show, but I don't remember if we ever had to stop and use a payphone, but yeah, we do. Yeah, no cell phones, nothing like that. Just, no video game, no nothing. Just being silly in the van and entertaining ourselves with our own humor.
So okay, so then how did you transition into how'd you go from that, and then when was the conversation when it was like you and Jeremy were like, hey, let's try this new thing?
Well, so Jeremy and I were playing in that punk rock band, Reason for Hate. I had graduated high school. I had joined Positive Greed. Reason for Hate broke up, and then we got back together. So then I was playing in Reason for Hate, Positive Greed. Then I started another band with Kevin Bird and Cassandra Millspaw. Kevin Bird was an Anti-Schism, and we were called the Igloo Sect. So I was doing those three bands. And then Dan Horner and Nate Mendel started coming over to the house that I was living at with Rick Guerra, Mike Hudson. There was, quite a couple people from Positive Greed, Greg Williamson. And it was like the Positive Greed house, essentially. Yeah. And Nate and Dan lived together a few blocks away. And they started coming over to the house, and I didn't know it at the time, but the reason why they started coming over to the house all the time is because they found out I lived there, and they had heard the demo tape Positive Greed did, and they said, we should get that drummer. So they started coming over and asking me to go and hang out and go on walks, and I was like, why are these guys wanting to talk to me? So they take me on a walk, and then they go, so how do you feel about playing drums in another band? I was like, oh, sure. So, and Nate was in had been in Guyan's Lap. He was in Christ on a Crutch at the time. Dan Horner had played in Resolution and Payne's Gray. And so, yeah. And I was already, respected them as players and stuff and the bands that they were doing. So I was like, totally. So I 18-year-old, hyperactive fool joined a fourth band. And, so I was having on an average of 2 to 3 practices a night. And,
Jesus.
And, and we're just going and going. And so then we started that band. And then, but that was not with Jeremy. That was completely separate. And then Jeremy moved to Spokane. Reason for Hate broke up. And then Jeremy moved back from Spokane, and we started hanging out. And he actually, he showed Dan and Nate and I already had heard all the songs. He'd been sitting in his room since he was 13, coming up with these songs that were his little secret in his room with his 4-track that were just amazing. Some of those songs exist today out there that have been recorded that he wrote when he was a kid. And so I was always blown away. I was always like, wow, this weird, powerful, beautiful secret. This music is amazing. And, but it was his little secret thing. And then, Dan and Nate and I had a issue where basically we wrote a whole bunch of songs that were all instrumental, and we were going to try to find a singer. Couldn't find one. We were from a punk rock scene where basically there was not really singing. It was just screaming. Yeah. But we were trying to do an experiment in writing music that was a little bit more, elaborate storytelling, I guess you want to say. Okay. And so we were working on these songs that were instrumental, couldn't find a singer. So then we just said, screw it. Well, we've always had people that scream, so we'll just do this music and Dan will scream with this music. And we just settled, you know. We had no aspirations, or we weren't trying to be like, we're going to make it, because that just didn't exist in your mind, because, you know, you're a part of this punk rock scene. You were doing music to do it for the sake of doing it, to express yourself, period. That's all. There was no like, you know, like pot of gold at the other side of a rainbow. There was just honest self-expression. That's it. And that was enough. That was the most important thing.
Was this the Thief Steal Me a Peach? Because I've heard of that, and I think, wasn't that the name of the band first when Dan was singing?
Yes. Okay. So yeah, it gets very complicated. So so
fun.
almost Thief Steal Me a Peach. So not really though. So Dan and Nate and I first started. We were called Empty Set, or no, we first were called Everything Was Beautiful, Nothing Hurt, and then we were called One Day I Stopped Breathing. Then we were called Chewbacca Kaboom, and then we were called Empty Set, and then we finally called ourselves Sunny Day Real Estate, and that was still before Jeremy was playing with us. Then Nate went on tour with Christ on a Crutch, and I'd been talking to Nate and Dan saying, you know, Jeremy can sing. We should bring him into the band and have him sing. And Dan was like, no, it's fine. No, it's fine. It's fine the way it is. But he did really like what Jeremy did. Jeremy started. So then we played like this New Year's Eve party at a house. And Jeremy opened up playing an acoustic set of his songs. And then we played. Then we did a show in Spokane with Lungfish where Jeremy opened up with an acoustic set. We played. Then Lungfish played. And Nate went on tour with Christ on a Crutch. And Dan said, here's what we're going to do. Let's start another new band, and I'll play bass, being Dan, and Jeremy will sing and play guitar, and you play drums. So we were like, okay, that's what we'll do while Nate is gone. So then that's Thief Steal Me a Peach, right there. So Thief Steal Me a Peach was Dan and I joining up with Jeremy and not Nate. And so we were called Thief Steal Me a Peach. We wrote like, I don't know, I think 6 songs with the 3 of us. Played so all ages shows were basically illegal at that time because of this teen dance ordinance. And then Curtis Pitts, a friend of ours, basically, you know, went to bat and fought to be able to get an all ages show set up at a place called the Oddfellows Hall in Seattle. And so we played that show with Rain Like the Sound of Trains, which had Dougie Bird from Beefeater and Pete Kramiak from Verbal Assault, who's a really, really, really good friend of mine and a great human being, and Chukung, a band called Chukung.
Okay.
So we played that, and Hush Harbor played. So we played that show, and Nate got back from tour, and we basically showed Nate the songs we had written with Jeremy, and Nate was like, well, that's better than our other songs because we have there's a singer. So what do we do? And we're like, well, let's dump the 46 songs that we wrote before Jeremy, and then we'll start over with these 6 new songs that we have written with Jeremy. Play what, you know, you can basically do what Dan did on bass or do your own adaptation of it. Dan will move to second guitar, and Nate will play bass.
So this might be a dumb question, but just because you said 46 and 47 and 48 are 2 songs that I know from record, does that have anything to do with those songs on Diary?
Yeah. So 47 and 48 are it means it's the 47th and 48th songs that we had written since we started the project even without Jeremy. And then the songs 7, 8, and 9 were the 7th, 8th, and 9th songs that we had written since we started with Jeremy.
That's so fucking. I'm sure you probably said this in other interviews and I have not heard, but like for years, there's so many things about you guys' song titles. And just even how it feels to be something on, like there's always like it's a thought that doesn't go anywhere where you're like, I know. And so it's like that, so it's like even like your song titles, like you guys had a very obscure, and I won't talk, you know, I don't want to jump too far, but like it just seems like you guys had this very like you're really in deep with the shit you guys were thinking. Either that or I'm just overthinking that, and you're like, no, it's the fucking 47th and 48th song. Like it's pretty straightforward. But
that's kind of straightforward. However, that was so there's a lot of song titles that were my fault.
Like Blankets or the Stairs or like
Yeah,
You're
that's I
scared,
that
scared of?
blankets for the stairs. That was me. So they would basically be like, "What's this song called?" And I would throw a title out, and it would
Really?
usually be that. So many times, not always, but many times. So blankets for the stairs was one of those times. 7, 8, and 9. That was my fault. 47, 48, my fault. And
My fault.
God, what else? There's another weird one. Oh, Shark's Own
Brendel.
Private Fuck. That's me.
Yeah, that one. When I saw that, when you guys put that other out, when you put How It Feels to Something on out on, I was like, oh my God, are they swearing in this album? Like, what steps are they taking
I know.
now?
Parental guidance. I know.
Well,
I know.
actually, Blankets for the Stairs is my favorite. That and Shadow. Well, Shadows is an easy say for like favorite song, but like Blankets for the Stairs were my. That one I think I've played the most on Diary. There's
Yeah.
something about just like that break in the chorus. Just I was like, holy shit, what is this?
Yeah, I really liked that song too.
Yeah, it's fucking
Yeah.
great. So like, okay, so you guys get together and you start playing. How soon after were you guys on Sub Pop?
Um. I, Time is very difficult. I can't. I could only speculate, and I would do even a terrible job at that. Sort of like being able to give an accurate estimation as to how long it was before we started playing, where Nate joined in, and then the thing happened with Sub Pop. I can't remember how long it was.
Well, were you
But
guys
what?
playing like a bunch of shows leading up to that? Like obviously they came to obviously when you're on a label there's buzz or you send a demo out and they're like, "Wow." But like so you guys had to have been playing shows leading up to that though.
So yeah, none of that was going on because the whole grunge scene thing was happening. The only way to be able to get a show at like the Off Ramp or whatever, or the Crocodile or different places, you had to kind of know someone that was involved in that scene, and we didn't. So anytime we would call to try to get a show, they would just hang up on us. So so that one all ages show at the Oddfellows Hall that was a cool thing, but it didn't mean that there were all ages shows all of a sudden popping up all over the place again. So we were still essentially stuck in the basement, and then this band called Engine Kid with
Yeah.
Brian Kraft, Greg Anderson, and Jade Devitt. They were going to play a show at the Crocodile with a band called Skirt, and they couldn't play it. And so Greg said to Eric Soderstrom, the guy who books the Crocodile, he said, "Hey, there's this other band called Sunny Day Real Estate. You should throw them on the bill." And so he did. And so it was just by some accident that we got that show at the Crocodile. And so we went, we set up, we played the show. The Eric Soderstrom, the booking agent, came over to us and he said, "Hey guys, I'm going to put you guys on the Sub Pop Party show coming up, playing first."
Holy shit.
He goes, "And I just want to see what happens." And we're like, "Okay." And he goes, "Would you be into doing that?" And I was like, "Sure." We were like, "Sure." So time came. We played that show. There was one person in the audience. It was early. Nobody had gotten there yet. So there was one person, from what I remember, standing there watching us. And it was Jonathan Poneman, who ran Sub Pop Records. And I think Eric went up to Jonathan and said, "Just check out this first band." So he specifically went in to check us out. We got done playing, and Jonathan Poneman walked up to us and said, "Hey, you guys want to make a record?" And we started laughing. And we were like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And he goes, "No, I'm serious." We didn't know who he was. And he goes, "I'm Jonathan from Sub Pop. Do you guys want to make a record?" And we were like, "Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, sure."
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was totally bizarre. Totally bizarre. It was all just like fluke after fluke after fluke.
So really, so leading up to that first show where you guys were like spotted, and the guy's like, "Yo, you should go and do this Sub Pop show." How tight were you guys? Like, were you practicing a lot? Like, did you feel?
Oh yeah, we that's all we were doing. We would practice. We just played and played and played and practiced and practiced and practiced. That's all we did.
Were you guys becoming like tight friends during that too? Like, would you guys like play and then talk and like go out and like just bullshit about life or whatever?
You know, it was basically like being in a gang.
It's just so fucking dope. Um, like, and at that point, so you were graduated. You had graduated high school. Then Jeremy was still in high school at this point, or he was out.
He stopped going to high school, and he just high school was getting in the way of him playing music, so he just decided to just say the hell with it. And so, so so he just sort of like moved high school to the side and just moved forward with life. And I barely graduated high school, but I don't even know how they let me graduate. But I it was more from a lack of participation and perhaps a little bit of a learning disability. But that aside, Jeremy, wait, shit, what was the question?
Oh yeah, I was just like, no, like just where you guys were in time. So you were out of high school. He had just left high school. So I'm trying to think about just like your ages. So you're like between 19 and like 20.
So I was turning 19 and he was 17, I think, when we started Sunny Day. Yeah.
So when you guys were practicing, like did you guys kind of have like a huddle at some point and be like, yo, we got something here. Like we should try to make this into something, or was it just we have nothing else to do, this is super fun, let's just keep getting together and practicing as much as possible?
It was more like it was more like this personal thing where we were creating this music and we were like, not saying it was good, but just for us personally, we were kind of blown away by the fact that we were able to like keep working and working at this thing and eventually come up with this thing, this like a painting, all these different paintings. We're like, wow, we made that up. That's so cool.
It makes sense because you guys put so much thought, and it sounds like just in the songs, obviously in the songs themselves, and then the title. Sure, there was sometimes it was like just a weird name, but it all made sense. So like, even in Diary's artwork is to this day, like people have tattoos of this shit all over their body.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever heard of?
That's Chris Thompson. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think I tried to find out who, because he did. That's a he, right? I'm sorry, I'm just making.
Yeah, he. Yeah, okay. Yeah. He did How It Feels. Too.
Yeah, and he did How It Feels, which artwork was fucking awesome as well. It seems like you said like you were creating this painting, which made sense because visually you guys did that, and then sonically, I hate that fucking term, but you guys did that as well. So going into record Diary, like were all the songs flushed out, or were you writing?
Yeah. We had already had like basically all the songs we had already written. And, we just needed to go and record them. And Chris Thompson also lived with us. So that was during a period of time where Jeremy, Nate, Dan, and I were all living together in one house. And Chris Thompson, the guy who did the artwork for Diary, he also lived in that house. And so we basically we asked him to do a painting for each one of the songs.
So all that artwork is literally a painting?
Yeah, they're full size. Some of those paintings are huge. I actually have the one with the paper airplanes for How It Feels hanging on my wall. I'm looking at it right now.
That's fucking awesome. That
and
was
then
like
the Every Shining Time You Arrive painting with the deer with the mechanical legs. I've got that one too.
So as you guys were recording this, did you say, "Hey man, we're gonna need some artwork. Can you just Can you just paint some stuff?" And he was like, "Yeah."
Yeah. Well, I know that it was Chris and Dan did the most communicating about it. And I don't know what that communication was or how Dan would be able to tell you how in depth Dan went they went as far as like, but Chris just basically would come up with something. Basically Chris would listen to the song and come up with the painting and be like, this is what I came up with from the song.
Do you know, I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but the cover, like what song was he listening to when he came up with that?
I have no idea. I have I don't remember. Okay. I didn't even know if that one was specifically for a song, but I mean more like, like from what I remember, he would like listen to the songs and then come up with a painting for this song, that song, I think. But I could be misremembering. You'd have to check with him. Actually, I'm going to see him probably in a couple months, I think, because he's a tattoo artist and my wife wanted a tattoo that he started on her to be finished. So I'll ask him and I'll get back to you.
Yes, please do that. That'd be fucking great. So you go and record, and then at this time, when you're recording, were you still playing shows, or were you just in the studio for X amount of time and then you started playing more shows?
So we released a 7-inch record called Thief Steal Me a Peach by whatever, but it was a Sunny Day Real Estate 7-inch, and it was called Thief Steal Me a Peach 7-inch, and it had the songs I think 8 and 9 on it, and Kurt Block recorded those. Sub Pop paid to put it out, but it was under our label, but it was paid for by Sub Pop. And and then we put that out. We went on tour. We went on tour with the Dirt Fishermen, 30-06. God, who else? We did a bunch of touring before we recorded that record. So, and we ended up basically touring. Actually, no, we toured with 30-06 after Diary. I'm sorry. We did a bunch of touring, and then we basically toured out to Chicago, played shows, and then got to Chicago and stayed there and recorded the record in Chicago.
And this was like around 90, because you guys, when did you guys break up? Well, it was like 95. 95. All right, and then when you recorded Diary, because I mean, Spotify says 94, and I think that was right around the time. Was it 94? I mean, I can go on Wikipedia and shit like that, but
honestly, man, for me, my brain, and as far as time is concerned, I struggle. But I'm pretty sure we started Sunny Day in late 92, I think, but I could be wrong.
I mean, did you guys, when you were on tour, did you have people coming up to you like, yo, this is something different?
No.
Did you think it was something different?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't really ever look at it like that. It was, we were more just like, I mean, there was usually on average of like maybe 2 to 5 people there at every show, if that.
Wow.
You know, so basically we were just touring, playing to no one. And that's just the way that it was, you know.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's so amazing to just, I've talked to bands before where they were doing their thing and like no one's really paying attention, and all of a sudden they stop and then everyone's like, oh shit, and then they pay attention, and then you're like, what the fuck? Like, where were you then?
Well, I mean, in all fairness, I mean, you know, how could, I mean, I know where they were. I mean, how could have been, there's no way, I mean, you only hear about it when you hear about it. And the only way that people heard about it was us going out. And, but honestly, man, what really made it possible for people to hear about it, it was when the record finally came out on Sub Pop. And Sub Pop at that time, if something came out on Sub Pop, you know, people went, I'll take a listen. That has a lot to do with it. Sub Pop was very frustrated, though, because we refused to do any interviews, and press was, you know, a big part of promotion, but we didn't do interviews.
So I've heard that, yeah, there's always that rumor, and I've seen interviews where you've answered this, and like I try to like really, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions I've asked you here that you've answered like a million times. And I have heard like, you know, the whole you guys wouldn't tour in California because like Dan didn't want to, you know, I've read that
Correct.
before, and I'm sure you're asked, but I am just gonna fucking ask it. Like, what did you guys have like some kind of punk rock thing going on where you're like, yeah, we're just let the music speak for itself and that's all we're gonna say, or were you guys like,
that's basically what it was.
You weren't like, this is just they're so boring and we're answering.
No, it was more like, you know, anything that we have to say is being said already through the music that's being created collectively.
Damn, you guys are really artsy dudes.
I guess, I don't know, or yeah, I don't know, maybe, but
so like I know that I've read that as you guys were touring, there was like tension and things like that Bill. I mean, because you guys really did not.
So we did all the touring that we did before Diary was recorded.
That's it.
Then after we recorded Diary, we were on tour 30-06 and the record came out. And then we didn't do any touring for the Pink record. We actually did our last tour as a band where we went on the tour but had already broken up but did the tour anyway, was Shudder to Think.
Yeah, okay.
And what had happened is, if I'm remembering correctly, we went in and Nate and Jeremy and I tracked the music, our parts for the Pink record before we went on tour with Shudder to Think, I believe. I'm remembering that correctly. And then we stopped, did that tour Shudder to Think. Then afterwards, Dan went in and tracked his parts, and then Jeremy went in and did the vocals. But we were broken up when we went on tour Shudder to Think and Soul Coughing. And also, Brainiac was on the first part of that tour.
Like,
and
okay,
so go ahead.
What, like, just did you guys just realize that being on tour, because you guys live together and you're buds, and then you go, because I know it's like, because I've been on tour, like my band, we went on tour like I think like 7 or 8 times, and we had inner turmoil, and we weren't even like really getting anywhere. And this is like 98 to 2000. So it's like I know what it's like to live in a van. I know it's like to get on people to get on your fucking nerves. And so it's like, but you guys, and I think sometimes when bands, they are seeing, they're showing up and there's 50 people, 100 people, it's like, okay, like this is makes us feel there's less tension. We're not like trying so hard and this isn't working. But it sounds like when you guys are on the road, you know, you're showing up and it's not really working out the same way, which can cause tension, right?
Well,
Like, is that part of it?
yeah. Well, what's interesting is, so for us, it was always worth doing it because we were always just doing it for the sake of creating and the music and self-expression.
Yeah.
At least that's for me personally. So regardless of anyone ever showing up, for me, it was always worth doing it. I didn't care.
Nice.
So, I wasn't doing music to become popular. I was doing music because I had something that I needed to express. So, you know, whether not necessarily for anyone else to hear, but just for me personally. When Jeremy decided that he was going to leave the band and we broke up, we did that tour with Shudder to Think, and it was about halfway through that tour, people started showing up. And we realized that there were some of those people that were showing up to see us. And then there were shows selling out. Wow. And we were like, wow, too bad we're broken up. Yeah, it was really sad because,
oh man,
yeah, it was crazy. Like we had some really, really authentic spiritual interactions and exchanges with people that were coming out to see us play, to the point where I actually was brought to tears at one point. Just couldn't believe that I had that experience. And that's definitely a time where I thought, wow, too bad we're broken up.
God damn. That's just so crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, when we got back from that tour, things were really starting to pick up and take off, but we were done. So it was like, what can you do?
Wait, so then how did you guys, and I've read, there's always there, there's a lot of stuff out there about you guys, and like, I think there was a religious thing that was, as people talk about, like, I'm not going to go into all that because I'm sure you talked about it a million times. But like you guys get back and that happens. And then the Pink album, when you guys had broken up, that had been recorded, or did you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had tracked that. And I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this correctly, that we tracked it. Jeremy and I and Nate tracked the music aspect of it just instrumentally before we went on that tour, and then after we were done with the tour, then that's when Dan went in and did his parts, and then Jeremy went and did his vocals. I think that's how it happened. I mean, I know for sure that it happened where we tracked everything instrumentally, Jeremy and Nate and I, and then Dan did his, and then Jeremy did his. Whether I'm correct as far as it being tracked before we left for the tour and then finished after, I don't remember exactly.
Well, there's such a difference between Diary and the Pink album as far as sound goes. Like,
sure.
Like, I'm sure people have said that before. Like, why was there such a difference, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know if I can really articulate that in any sort of human language. It was always just, for us, it was always just a snapshot of where we were as human beings musically at the time.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly changing as a human and evolving and growing, hopefully. And so that's what happens. That comes out through the music, I guess, as time goes on.
I mean, I will say Red Elephant is probably one of my all-time favorite Sunny Day songs. That song is so great. So I just thought about this too, and I was really thinking about this as you're talking. Like, my brain's kind of going, and your albums really have been this milestone with me in just relationships. And I'm sure a lot of people can say that, but I can pick out song from each of the 4 albums you guys did, and I can attach that to a time, and it like encapsulates a relationship that I had, and like let's say
painful. That sounds so painful.
That's the thing, is like, because like growing up, I mean, I was so, hard on my sleeve and all that stuff, and I was like so emotional with like
I hear you.
Stuff. And it's like Shadows is one of those songs where it's like, if I think about Sometimes, it reminds me of like my first relationship. And then like
Hmm.
Blankets or the Stairs, I attached it to that. And then Red Elephant was a huge one to that same relationship. Actually, this is all from the
Yeah.
same relationship. Days Were Golden. I mean, like, Jesus Christ. That
Yeah.
song, because that would be like when we're sitting in a car, like, just from my perspective, this is like me just like expressing this, but like that was like the summer, us hanging in a car, just basically like stars are out, and the two of us just like young love, just like talking and like just like being in a relationship. But the soundtrack in the background was like your guys' songs, and it's just so it's like I just had to express that because they were such huge songs for me, and I think a lot of people felt that. So yeah, Red Elephant was one of those. It's just like a long way to say that song kicks ass.
Yeah. The
Because the drum
interesting
part's
thing.
so fucking dope in that song. Like, how did you think about that?
What the
Like the fill and like the chorus for that. Like, did that just like was that something you'd been like dicking around with, or in the moment you're like, oh wait a minute, that just randomly happened?
Yeah, I was definitely, when we were working on a lot of those songs, I was definitely trying to, I was definitely had more of a counterintuitive approach towards some of the parts.
Because it's a sick drum line. Like, it's so, I don't know. It's just like that was one of the things like that, along with usually it's lyrics or a melody, but that song actually it's the drum part is why I love that song so much.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I always just thought a lot of the drum parts were that I did for like that song, and a lot of those other songs were just very counterintuitive, very bizarre decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I
I
love
was.
them. They're so like it's like how did he think of this shit? And I'm not a drummer.
Uh, I don't know. I'm not sure. I it was for me. Those decisions were made by doing. Yeah, I mean, I know that I could probably try to figure out a way to explain how that all came about, but I don't think I really can actually.
I
It was
think you
just
just did
what
though. I
was.
think I think saying that like it totally does. Like you're just like this is just the way my head speaks and my emotions speak, and then it just comes out, and it's like that's
Yeah,
the end result. So take
yeah.
it as
But
is.
I can say that there was a conscious effort to do things that people wouldn't normally decide to do. You know.
What do you mean?
So, well, like just counterintuitive drum parts, fills that kind of overlap into the next part. I don't know how to explain it, but just coming up with drum parts that were unique and original. That I was trying to do.
Yeah,
So,
I think you
yeah.
fucking nailed it
Yeah.
so many
I
times.
was listening. I was listening to a lot of Slint at that time, and Britt Walford was definitely having a huge impact on me. Although none of my playing sounds anything like him on the record, but at the same time, he was definitely, and I would say he has a very counterintuitive approach.
So did you find that during this time, well, you kind of answered, but like you are like when I would write like a song, like this is totally different, but like I would hear bands that I'd be like, oh wow, that's kind of I don't say North Star, but that's something I got to push myself because that's so good. Even
Sure.
though I don't consider myself like what they are, but I need to have something that comes out that would impress me as much as if me hearing that right now.
I hear you. Yeah, no, yeah, it absolutely has everything to do with being inspired by stuff that you're being inspired by. Coming up with things because of your own personal inspiration from other people that you're listening to. Yeah.
So you guys break up again 95, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
this is when I'm getting out of middle school, I think I'm in high school at this point, and then I'm finding punk rock. So I'm getting like bands like my friends are getting CDs like Face to Face, No Effects, and stuff. And then I had heard of you guys prior to this, so I'm bringing this into the mix with me and thinking like this shit like fits for some reason. And then the
Yeah.
emo stuff starts happening. So this is like a hard way for me to ask the question because it's like a financial thing, but like was one of the things that caught your attention after you broke up was all of a sudden because this is a time where you could still get royalty checks, right?
Uh, yeah. I guess. I mean, well, how do you mean? Like,
Meaning like okay,
per-
like you guys get points for records and stuff from albums where like at that point if you're in a band and you a certain amount of records sell, like you would get checks per month or 6 months. Like I don't know what a setup was, right? Like
yeah.
I'm gonna put this in a soft way. Like basically like did you guys start noticing like why are these checks just getting a little bit increased? Is that like a sign of going, wait, are these records selling right now?
Um, I don't remember those checks being large throughout that time.
Okay. I didn't mean to like, I'm not trying to dig out, but I just feel like what was like the radar going off where you're going, like, hey man, Diary is like still like that's becoming big, like in this thing that's happening around us.
Um, I don't know. I didn't know that was happening because I just, I ended up getting on a train that was very bizarre and was sort of just I had a very bizarre, tumultuous couple, 2.5, 3 years after that.
Yeah,
And
I do know about that. I don't want to like dig into it, so I don't.
yeah, but I just wasn't. My mind was not. People would say to me, bring Sunny Day up to me, and it just didn't quite register. I didn't really process that there were people that were actually listening to it.
I mean, I will. The only thing I'll say about like the whole Foo Fighters thing is like when I saw the video of you guys playing, I was like, holy shit, those are like the fucking two guys from Sunny Day. This is amazing. Like I was so
Yeah,
stoked. I was so stoked about that. But
it was an
like,
interesting thing at the time, for sure.
yeah, okay. So then when you guys, because I did read an article in '98 when you guys got back together to do Hatfields to Be Something On, and then you did the live record. Like, what led up to you guys going like, hey, like we should do this shit again?
Um, so after I left the Foo Fighters, I was pretty burnt out because I toured with the Foo Fighters for 17 months.
Yeah, you guys went like
Right.
hard too.
And and there was a whole bunch of fucking other stuff that was just very disenchanting and kind of took the wind out of my sails, etc. And I I was very discouraged. I met some folks from Olympia and was going down to Olympia, jamming with some people, essentially just trying to rediscover the fire. I had to try to find the inspiration to make music again. I was fighting for it because I was completely, I just had completely lost all inspiration musically. I was completely disenchanted.
Yeah.
And so it was Pete Kramiak from that band Rain Like the Sound of Trains that we played that Oddfellows Hall show with as Steve Seal Me Peach a long time ago. Pete was in Verbal Assault. He was living in Olympia, and he was actually the person that forced me to sit down and play. And we were writing a bunch of songs and working on some music. I played in a project that only lasted a very short period of time with Chris Smith, who was in Carp, and Sean Kelly, but that was short-lived for a few reasons. But that's a long story. So I was playing with Pete. I was also playing in this sort of like experimental improv band called The Replicants with Justin Trosper from Unwound and Brant Sandino, Aaron Kento Oiwa was in that band. So I was doing all that. I also was doing a little bit of a thing with this band called Loud Machine Point 5 that was from Japan, but that was all happening in Olympia. And it's a long, long story. But while I was doing all this searching in Olympia, I got a phone call from Greg Williamson, who was the singer of Positive Greed, who also produced Jeremy's first solo record, Return of the Frog Queen.
Yep.
And Greg was pushing for Sunny Day to get back together. Jeremy and I talked, and then we met with Dan. And so the three of us started meeting at Jeremy's house in Seattle, in his basement, set up, and that's where we started writing How It Feels to Be Something On, and we wrote that there.
What was the first song you guys wrote on the record?
Oh, you know what? I can't remember what the very first song was that we wrote. I think maybe Roses and Water, possibly.
Okay.
Yeah, and that song is about ice cream. Uh, There was this stuff called rosewater ice cream that we would get from this restaurant called Kabul, and we really liked it. And so I mean, I'm not saying that that's what the lyrics are all about, but that was the initial inspiration, was the ice cream. So
Wait, real quick, just kind of brought up something. Like from all the records up to that point, how much did you guys all have into the lyrics? Did you guys have any input at all, or?
So a lot of times what we would do is Jeremy would sing a melody and kind of just make up words on the spot. And then what we would do is we would sit down and listen back to the melody with the sort of improvisational whatever sounds and words. And we would say, that sounds like this. This sounds like you're saying this. And this sounds like you're saying that. And that's a lot of times that's how the lyrics were created.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's rare that a band will collaborate about like the lyrics, because that's such
it
a
wasn't
personal
always
thing.
like that, but at that time, that was the approach for sure.
You guys get together. How fast did you guys write the 10 songs?
I can't remember exactly. Like I said, time's weird for me. I think it might have been a couple months. I think maybe, but so Nate had decided to come on board to do How It Feels to Be Something On, and so he said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then we didn't hear from him for months, and we were like kind of frustrated, and actually got to the point where we were kind of pissed.
Okay.
And we were like, "Dude, what's the deal?" And then just out of the blue, he just calls one day, and I was pissed, and he goes, "Hey, we're gonna make a record." And I said, "Not with you," and I hung up. I was really pissed because we were basically sitting around waiting, no word from him, and he was on tour, with the Foo Fighters still, because he'd stayed after I left, and I think there was probably some tension between me and him regarding that, and anyway, so we decided to make the record without him, and we got a hold of this guy named Jeff Palmer, who Sunny Day had played a show with on the road a long time ago. And
he was in the Posies, right?
No. That's Joe Skyward. I'm talking about Jeff Palmer. He was in a band called the Mommy Heads, and he played bass on How It Feels to Be Something On.
That's right. And then like he left the band short after that, and then you got like Joe Bass filled in.
Yeah.
Okay.
He did. Yeah.
Right,
yeah. Joe had to learn like 19 songs in 6 days.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and he did it actually.
Yeah, because I know that because I read that article and I knew that guy was in it and he left, and I'm not gonna ask why, but so what was like, because you guys came out with this record, because I remember it just came out, my friend said, "Yo, new Sunny Day's out." I was like, what the fuck? And I heard it and it was so different because that's when Jeremy went like really falsetto, and then you guys put the live album out, and the live album you guys made to me it seemed like a conscious decision to make the majority of that album all of How It Feels to Be Something On with just a little bit of some other songs.
That was a conscious decision from the get-go because we were already feeling so different as people, and we were having a hard time going back to try to be the people that expressed the songs from Diary and the Pink record and we were just where we were at the time, and we were just wanting to do that. So, it took some time to be able to actually psychologically get over the hurdle of going back and sort of readapting older songs like that. But I mean, yeah, we definitely were focused on just where we were at the time, pretty much.
Well, I mean, it's funny because in 2009, you guys majority played Diary and the Pink album, and I don't think, and then you played Lipton Witch, which I don't think might have had a name at that point.
I don't think we played Lipton Witch. We played this other new song.
Oh.
I don't think we'd written Lipton Witch yet. There was this other new song, and we just called it New Song. And we we hadn't written Lipton Witch yet, I don't think, actually. But
sure. It was funny because I love How It Feels to Be Something On, and I love Rising Tide. So, I mean, I was beyond ecstatic that you guys played Diary and the Pink album, but I was like, man, I would really love to hear Tearing in My Heart or One or Disappear, because I'm like, obviously, those are great songs. And usually when a band gets back, so at that point though, when you guys got back together and did the live album, for me personally as a fan, I was like, oh man, where are the other songs? But then you had the VHS that had a couple of old songs, and then the CD had like I think that one had Red Elephant on it. So you had split it up to kind of make it like, hey, you have to buy both of these now to like hear those other
Yeah.
songs. But when you guys played that show, how long was the album out? Because you're playing in front of a crowd who you're doing
Mhm.
a live album in front of a crowd who knows you, but they don't know the songs.
Yeah. The first show that we played when we got back together during the How It Feels time, we played a show at the Moore Theater, and the How It Feels was not out or anything yet, and no one had heard any of the songs, and we only played all those new songs, and I think we played In Circles. That's it at the end, I think.
Yeah.
And which was kind of God, we were like, God, I hope people don't get mad at us because they didn't know any of the songs, but they were very, 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 very nice actually about it. So thank you, everybody, for being patient with us being stubborn.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, that's a ballsy move.
Yeah. Ballsy or just, stupid and stubborn. I'm not sure. But yeah, one or the other or both.
I appreciate it. I mean, I like now, like in hindsight, like I mean, I'm not you, but it seems like you guys are very strong-willed about your what you want to present. So it seems part of the chorus that you're like, this is what we do, and you're like, all right, well, I like the band a lot, so I get it. But then sometimes I'm like, God damn it, I wanted to hear Blankets or the Stairs.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so for me, being who I am and where I'm at now in my life, like in an imaginary world, if say there was like some kind of a sort of, oh, I don't know. Say if like there was a tour set up to where we went out, whoever it may be from Sunny Day, like say Jeremy and I went out and with some other players too, or whatever, or it was everybody. For me, in a perfect world, in a perfect imaginary world, I would be into doing a tour that was a show that was pretty long, about 2 hours or so at least, that covered everything from Diary, Pink Record, How It Feels, Rising Tide, and Fire Theft material, and all presented into one show. That's what I would do.
Oh, dude, I'd buy a fucking ticket for that in a second.
Yeah. But I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not.
Yeah, I know.
I
totally get that.
I'm just saying,
even though you're saying it's going to happen,
if the opportunity presented itself, that would be an idea that I had. But I'm not saying that's going to happen.
You heard it here first, folks. 2025, Sunny Day.
No, I'm not saying that. Jeremy, do you hear me? If you hear this, I'm not saying that. I'm not. It was just an idea that I would have if presented with such a possibility. That's the only, but that's it. It's an imaginary world. I'm not saying anything.
I don't know, man. Like I've never seen a band who writes so many goddamn good songs. Again, this is maybe just me with horse blinders on, and I'm such a fan. But like I do have appreciation. Again, for me personally, but I appreciate music, but they're great fucking songs. But like, so going from How It Feels to Be Something On, what was it like? Just there was like a 2-year difference between that album and then Rising Tide coming out.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was like 98. I think 98, How It Feels, and then Rising Tide. Because Rising Tide came out about the year my band had gone on its last tour. And I remember that because that summer leading up to it, I was working some shit like temp job. And that CD came out. My friend Amber Payne from Chicago, I know she's listening to this interview. I think she had told me about it. And I think she sent me, either she bought me a copy and sent it. I forget how I got it. And then I was just listening to that all day long in the shit job I was at. And then I worked landscaping, and I was like, I think this is like when I literally had to have like a tape cassette. This is before like iTunes and crap. So I was listening to Rising Tide that entire summer because I was like, this is so good. Like, I mean, How It Feels to Be Something I was like was such a shift from Diary. And Diary going to the Pink Album was like, there was a big difference between that and Diary, but then like How It Feels was such a difference because it's vocals. But then Rising Tide came up with this like big fucking sound that like I'm just gonna ask, like, there's such a difference in that. Like, were you guys listening to, like, what created that record sound, I guess?
Being where we were as human beings at that time, I guess. And then also, we worked with Lou Giordano, who was Husker Du sound man, and he also produced that Sugar Copper Blue record, Bob Mould's band Sugar, and then also he produced the first two Bob Mould solo records, which was Workbook and Black Sheets of Rain. And so we worked with Lou, and that was in Woodstock, upstate New York, and we were surrounded by like 5 or 6 feet of snow the whole time. And we were in this little house that was right next door to this old church from the 1800s that had been turned into a studio. And so we would walk through the snow every morning afternoon, noon, and basically walk over there and track. And that was a 3-month long period of working on that record.
Is that where you guys got the promo shot? Because you guys were in like the woods, I remembered, for that, and you had like heavy jackets on. It just seems.
Yeah, I think that was somewhere in. That was when we were mixing the record. We mixed the record in Vancouver, BC, Canada.
Oh wow.
So I know we tracked it in New York, and then we mixed it in on the other side of not the United States, but we're in Canada. But you know what I mean. That was in the woods in Vancouver somewhere.
But like you guys at the time, like you're touring too, like just here and there through those 2 years. Again.
Yeah, I can't remember. I know that we didn't tour from when we started working on the record and until we finished mixing it in Vancouver, BC. I don't think we played any shows at all through that period of time because we didn't even have a full band. It was just the 3 of us.
Oh,
so
really?
Jeremy,
you guys didn't have any like backup, like?
Well, no, for the record, Jeremy played bass on the Rising Tide, and so it was just the 3 of us. So then once it was done, we had to, basically try to get the band together to the shows and stuff. But right when the record was finished, the label we were on, Time Bomb, which was a subsidiary of Arista, they got dropped by Arista. So they basically were like, the record's going to basically be put out, but there isn't going to be anything put into it.
Oh,
They're
man.
like, nothing. It's just going to exist so out there kind of. But there isn't going to be any kind of, we're not putting any money into any kind of promotion at all. You guys are on your own. So yeah. But we managed to do some tours for the Rising Tide regardless.
How were they? Like, how were those tours? Were they like good shows? Like big shows?
Yeah. People came out. Nick McCree from Euphone. He was also with Ryan Rapsis, and also he was in Five Style. Not Five Style. Heroic Doses with Billy Dolan and Ryan Rapsis. And they were really great friends of ours. And then Greg Saran, who we met through Nick McCree, came in to play extra guitar for some of the more textural stuff that was on the record.
Were you guys actually playing like stuff from Diary and the Pink album on that tour? Are those tours?
I know. I'd have to look at a set list, but I know we were playing like 8 and Pillars, and so there was a mix of we definitely were throwing in more older songs, but not as many. We weren't playing like I don't know. I know we were playing 7. I can't remember, but we weren't playing everything, but there was a reasonable mixture of all the different songs.
This is the thing I wrote down before. What is that sound clip in Tearing in My Heart where the woman's like, here's some kids. Do you want to hear some kids? Listen. This has been driving me nuts since I was 18 years old or 20 years old.
Oh, well, I have the answer.
Thank you.
That clip is my sister, who was killed shortly after the clip, a couple years later. But I believe it was in 1979. She was walking in France because she was going to school there. And she had a little cassette recorder. And instead of writing letters between her friends and her, they would basically send cassette tapes with recordings of their voices. So she was walking with the cassette recorder and was walking by a park in Paris, France, and said that. And we put that at the beginning. And then she was killed. She fell off a cliff a couple years later. So
sorry for bringing that up, man.
No, that's okay. Okay. No, that's okay. It's fine. But that's the answer. Yeah. So people were wondering about that, and I'm like, it's not some weird staged, silly, stupid thing. It's very personal. So yeah.
The only thing I will say is that the interview that you did in that magazine, I remember this one part you said like you were trying to hit your drums so hard
to crack the earth in half to get it back for taking her away from me. Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember reading that, and I was like, God, everything about this band is just like incredible. Like that statement to me, I was like, that makes sense. He hit so fucking hard, but there's so much passion in like what you were doing, and I really wanted to ask that question. I was like, obviously didn't want to bring that up, but that just
yeah,
seems like, wow, that's
yeah,
powerful, man. Damn.
yeah. But that was also part of the problem with my playing then, is there was just so much anger and frustration that was coming through my playing, and it took its toll on my body. I had to kind of like get a hold of my psyche over time and try to like reapproach how I express myself.
And you said that you did, what was the first thing you did, like jujitsu or?
Oh no, there was martial arts training. It was more like Shaolin Kung Fu training, like Mo Temple system, and I did that really, really heavily for 7 years, like 7 days a week, 7 years. And rolfing, which is where they basically break all your muscle tissue down completely. It's a very painful process, and then rebuild it, and basically try to set your body's pattern back to where it was originally before you'd done all the damage. So it's a process of basically breaking down your muscle tissue and having it restore itself. And I also clean my digestive system with this certain kind of cleanser stuff through my friend Kwong. Drank like 12 ounces of wheatgrass a day, 4 ounces every 2 hours. Just basically trying to save my own life. I lived pretty hard, self-destructively, so I had to try to turn that around as well. So, yeah, there was a lot of stuff.
So with like when you went into doing How It Feels to Be Something On, and then Rising Tide, like was there any kind of like did you have any, I don't know what the word is, like you were kind of like, I'm not sure, man, like my body's feeling a bit fucked up right now, or that didn't even present itself until like after years
No,
after?
my body started getting really fucked up during the time touring with the Foo Fighters. It really started. The damage and injuries were really starting to kick in. Carpal tunnel, everything.
Well, I mean, you guys are
So
playing
that was
like every fucking night for, like you said, 17 months, right?
17 months. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was crazy.
So then you did feel that. So then going to those records, did you have any kind of like pushback of like, I don't know, man, like things are feeling a little weird, or you're like, oh hell yeah, this is like, I love this band.
I definitely was physically having a lot of problems, but I did it anyway because I was like, well, she's got to fight through it. So, but it wasn't until after Rise. It was during the fire theft period where the martial arts training had started. I had quit drinking completely, was turning everything around,
Yeah.
things like that, and trying to like heal myself. So.
God, this is like inspiration for me. I'm just like, man, I just really enjoy going out with my friends, but I think it's like fucking me up.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't have any sort of. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's that I wasn't doing that. I was literally committing suicide through drink. I mean, I was drinking. I was living very self-destructively. I wasn't just having a good time. I was medicating myself, and also the other reason I knew that I drank is because I had panic disorder, like serious, severe anxiety that I was diagnosed with. And so I finally realized the reason why I was drinking like that is because 3 beers in is when I finally felt like I stopped feeling like someone was trying to choke me or my lungs were collapsing from anxiety. Once I got an understanding of that and then started doing things to try to attack that anxiety issue, the drinking disappeared.
Yeah, I'm just gonna just share this like 6 years ago. 6 years ago, I was like married and I got separated suddenly. My wife like left me, so I didn't
I'm
like
sorry.
I went into, yeah. I mean, it's like, happens. I think percentage is gigantic, but I didn't know I didn't know what a panic attack was, and I didn't know what real anxiety was until like 4 or 5 months later. I was constantly tired, and I would wake up and have to take like a 10-minute nap after sleeping for 8 or 10 hours. And I was like, this has to be my diet. This has to be this. And it just turned out to be just like massive depression that I had. And I was just so like mad at that time. For over 2.5 years, like I was just constantly like that. So I just saying that because like I know, granted, it's different phases for different people, but that shit's fucking real, man. And it's
Yeah.
amazing because you, in your mind, you could be like trying to tell yourself fine, but your body's like, no, like we're still doing our thing, and you really can't stop that. And you can try to do a lot of healthy stuff, but if it's like something going on that you got to work out, that is affecting physically. So man, I know what it's like to, I don't know, just to have that shit just get fucked like that. So
Yeah. No, I definitely had to like put on the brakes and be like, okay, what are some things that I can do to get a handle on this?
yeah,
And so, I mean, there was a lot of cognitive therapy. I mean, martial arts training of any kind, or almost any kind, or yeah, I mean, any kind, pretty much. But martial arts training is a very, very good way to help yourself in that regard as well.
hmm.
That definitely had a huge impact. Turned me into a man, is what it did.
I think
So,
it's just good, obviously there's no way I'm going to press on that or like go deeper, but like I think it's just good for people listening because, the majority of the audience listening to this is probably like, late 30s, close to like 50s and stuff. And I think there's people listening out there that probably are going through some, shit. So I think just hearing that and hearing you can get out of it is just, sure, it's not the point of this conversation, but since it's like it opened up a little bit, I think some people might go, dude, like that actually, I didn't know that was a possibility. So
yeah. And when I say martial arts, I'm not saying fighting. I'm saying the process of the training that you go through so you can learn to not have to fight, and you start sort of like getting a handle on the inner struggle.
yeah,
That's
Oh yeah, totally. Um, Well, cool, man. Well, I just want to just real quick. So then, when you guys did play the 2009, actually, no, real quick. What was like? This is gonna go in a different direction. I'm not gonna like have it go too far, but what was like van life like for you guys? It seemed like it was a little tumultuous in the early days, but then you guys had Take Two in How It Feels, and then Rising Tide. Like, and that the second part of it, like, what were you guys like together touring around, like behind the scenes?
Well, so like when we were in a van or when we were wasting money on a bus.
Okay, either.
Touring in the bus, I mean, it was slightly necessary at the time because as opposed to having 5 people with us, we had 13 people. So, we kind of had to have, a bus. But unfortunately, when you get a bus and tour in a bus, any and all money that you make from that tour pays for that bus. So pretty much. So,
Jesus.
And we're not in it to make money, but I mean, one does have to eat, so we didn't ever really there was no like fist fights or anything that broke out or anything like between us, either in a van or on a bus or at any time. I mean, there was tensions and things and perhaps some arguments, but not anything super serious, I guess.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to say is like you guys are such, the sound you guys create is such an intense, big sound and like a serious sound. It's sometimes I think like usually outside of that, either people really live that or they're like really just goofy people, and it's like
I'd say it's both. I mean, there was a lot. I mean, I can speak for myself only, but I'm pretty sure I know Jeremy identifies with this. And but I mean, yeah, there was a lot of trauma throughout life that one has to try to process, and the traumas don't stop; they keep coming. People don't stop dying. But then so along with that, there was also an extraordinarily goofy sense of humor as well. But the sense of humor was not usually what the music was expressing. It was more like the trauma.
Yeah, that was very clear. Did you guys pay attention to any of the bands that were coming out in the late 90s that were that emo sound, like bands like Mineral or Texas the Reason or Knapsack or Braid?
We didn't actively not pay attention. We just they were brought to our attention, you know. So we started hearing about them because people were coming up and saying, "Hey, you should check out this band." I got a tape in the mail, I think, from someone from Mineral with a cassette tape that said Mineral on it because they sent me some stuff a long time ago. I think the thing that we struggled with was it all being called emo because we're like, whoa, huh? wait. We're like, wait a minute. Wait, what? Why is everyone calling this emo? Because in the punk rock scene that we were from, if someone called someone emo, it was usually meant as an insult. And so we were like, wait a minute, why are they calling this emo? So we had a different take on it. But I mean, the original that the phrase or whatever, the name emo came from, I think it was an article that was being written. Was it about Right to Spring originally? Yeah, I think so. Where they used that word, I believe. And so, and then of course, but then ironically, Right to Spring definitely was a big influence on Sunny Day as well.
And then why, just a couple more questions, I'll let you go. Why have you guys were writing, so you had the new song and then you had Lipton Witch, which you put out as a split with Circa Survive, which is a band that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
What stopped you guys from writing more stuff?
Nothing stopped us. We had tracked, so I'm going to have to navigate cautiously around this.
So is this going to go on with like your 2025 tour that you're going to do with all the
No, what I mean is try to be respectful of others involved as far as the circumstances that led to the Sunny Day record that was supposed to be finished in 2010 not happening. We essentially tracked 7 songs for that record musically. The only song that had vocals put on it and was released was the Lipton Witch. From where I was sitting back then, we went down to California to where the Foo Fighters studio is, and because that's where Nate wanted to do it. So after the reunion tour, we went down there. I know we were playing Coachella. It was a rough time kind of because I had an ear infection right before we had to get on the plane. And so then we got on the plane and my left ear exploded. And I'm 70% deaf in that ear permanently now. I was in a lot of pain when we were down there tracking the record, and then also when we were rehearsing for Coachella. But we tracked 7 songs. Then I got a call from Jeremy and Nate, I believe. I think there was a conference call. And they said, hey, we're going to have a conference call tomorrow at 3:30 about finishing the record. And I said, okay. Next day came, phone never rang. And then I never heard anything from anybody since.
Like you've never talked to anybody since?
No, I have now, but it was about 5 or 6 years before I did. It just disappeared. Basically, something happened, and one thing led to another, to where basically the record was abandoned.
I think I did read that. I think I have heard about this now that I think about it. Okay. Is there a
and I never really had a full understanding of why that record was abandoned really until like 6 years later.
So is there a possibility of it coming around, or if not, is there a possibility of you guys getting back together and being like, all right, let's do other songs?
I just don't know. I have no idea. I just don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. As far as getting back together, like Dan, Jeremy, Nate, and I would say 100% no. Most likely not. But I just don't know. I have no idea, because there's things that I've been like, oh, that'll never happen, and then they did. So there's no way to predict the future. But I just don't know. I was very frustrated, because I personally felt like that was going to be the best Sunny Day record as of yet.
Wow.
And I was very, very upset that it was abandoned. But I've had to just let it go. I've had to let it go. So
I'm just going to ask this, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I'm just asking more about like the sound, the style. Like, which record do you think you would have compared it to? Or like little parts from?
I don't know if I could objectively answer that. I think someone else who's heard those tracks probably could. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I've heard some people compared it to being reminiscent of earlier Sunny Day stuff, but I just don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like Lipton Witch was like kind of a mix between Rising Tide, like not so big as Rising Tide, but like, and kind of almost in a mix. I thought it was like between the Pink album and Rising Tide. That's what that song sounded like to me. Like it would have fit in between the two of them.
That sounds like it makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause there was like a stripped down, just basic, just driving, just kind of like chord progressions, but then you guys having your sound on top of that. Because like Rising Tide was just like there was so much just space going on with those
Yeah.
songs. Like it was just like I felt that I mean I'd have to be driving without the windows down to like physically feel like the wind blowing on me because I felt like if I was sitting in a room I was having that like experience
Yeah.
because it was just so like just open.
Yeah.
Yeah, but well, cool, man. Um, that's pretty much. I don't know if I had anything else. Oh, one more. Yeah, one more question I asked the last two. There's a famous photo of you guys playing. This is black and white photo, and it's on the top of your Spotify page, and it's like Jeremy singing. Nate's got like this long hair, and you guys are wearing like suits or
Suits?
something. Yeah, like I that was like the only image I can find in like '97 because this is when the internet was starting to pop and I was like trying to like research you guys. I was like, what do these guys look like? Like, what is it about this band? And I remember this photo. This came up, and I actually had it as like a background photo for a while because I thought it was so cool. Because I was like, wait, they're playing in suits and like the sound. Do you know where that was taken? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was at the Crocodile Cafe in Seattle.
Was that the show before you guys got on Sub Pop?
No, that was I think that was another Sub Pop showcase show that we played, but that wasn't the Sub Pop show where we first were seen by Jonathan Hyman. It was more like after we were already on Sub Pop.
Okay. That like all these little things I've always wanted to know. I finally know. This is great.
Yeah. So yeah, that would have been probably the third show at the Crocodile, maybe. Yeah, that we were playing. The first one was Skirt, second one Sub Pop Party, third one another Sub Pop thing. So yeah.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up. But this was awesome, and
Yeah, and thank you again for your patience. I appreciate it, man.
absolutely no. Thank you for doing this. I'm very excited that you did this. All right, so this is I don't know how I usually ask this. Actually, well, first of all, what do you want to plug before I ask the last question?
Oh, plug?
Yeah.
Peace, man. I want to plug peace. No,
Okay.
I mean, well, yeah, sure, there is that, but well, I guess what I'm doing right now is a project called Assertion. So I basically walked away for 9 years and was basically busy, trying to figure out how to find ways to feed my family, and and really was almost hiding from music, like avoiding it, and then it got resparked by Justin Tominga, who has a band with his kids called Pig Snout, and I was very inspired by what they were doing. And I have a son who is autistic. He has a son who's autistic, and he also teaches music to autistic children. And I was very interested in learning about that approach and his experiences. And then we just started playing together, and now we're working on our record. We've got 11 songs tracked and 5 mixed. We still have to mix the rest. So.
I think that like when we first started talking and you just like text me this song, one of your songs, I was like, wait, I don't think he sent it to the right person. And so I listened to it. I was like, dude, this is awesome. You're like, thanks. I was like, oh wow, he actually did send it to me to like see what I thought. So I thought that was really cool. And then you like, you'll sometimes do. I mean,
oh no, if you want, so there's a song called "Supervised Suffering" that I think I sent to you. You can play that song if you want. It's up to you.
Okay. Yeah.
You don't have to.
I just didn't. Well, I didn't know like because you've been sending me like a bunch of songs and I didn't like. I mean, saying this, I don't want your band to hear and be like, "What the fuck, man?"
No, it's fine. No, they know that I sent you those tracks. But
okay.
The song, I wouldn't play that song "Set Fire." But I would. But the song "Supervised Suffering," if you want, you can play that. That song is available on Bandcamp.
Okay, so yeah, how can people find you guys? I'm sure they can just Google Assertion, but because I know.
Assertion. I think it's like Assertion Band or Assertion Bandcamp, and it'll pop up, and we have a few songs on there. And the most recent one would be "Supervised Suffering," and we're pretty happy with how that turned out.
Awesome.
And but yeah, so we're basically primarily Justin basically is literally trying to learn how to produce as we go. Like we're like basically learning how to produce our own record as we're doing it. So
Well, it sounds good, man. So when you sent it to me, I was like, wow, that was really nice that you sent it. So I just want to say I appreciate it
Sure.
that you sent it to me.
Yeah, no, thank you for taking the time to give it a listen.
Yeah, man. All right, so last thing, this is gonna be interesting because usually the bands I'm talking to, we're talking about the scene, the punk scene at the time, but like, and so it's like usually the late '90s scene, but from like your scene, hopefully this question makes sense. So I would just ask, like, what scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
Um, well, I mean, I guess scene ethics. Okay, Fugazi, their approach and the way they did things, to me, that is like the most powerful thing that had ever been achieved by any band. They were always authentic and true to themselves all the way through, unwavering. And I hold them as like they're kind of like at the top of that mountain as far as the most ethical approach. That's what I believe. Yeah. So, but it's very difficult to pull that off, but they did it. So I guess that would probably be the best way to answer that question.